Welcome everyone to the North of Stevensville North Open House. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amy Aiello and I'll be the communication manager for this project. There we go. So I've got a few very important people with me today. That is the members of the project team. So with me, I've got Bob Boson. He's the district administrator for District 1. We've got Jacqueline Smith, the pre-construction engineer, Joshua Dold, the road design project manager, Andy White, the state secondary roads engineer, and Maureen Walsh, who is the right-of-way supervisor. Thank you all for joining us today. I've also got Katie, my colleague, on the call. She's going to facilitate the Q&A at the end of this presentation. So if any of you attendees have any questions along the way during this presentation, please feel free to pop those in the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll make sure to get those answered at the end. Next slide here. All right, so today we're going to discuss what MDT has planned for this project, the North of Stevensville North project, including the details of the safety improvements, as well as any pre-construction efforts such as right-of-way acquisitions, which is the phase that we're in right now. We'll talk through the timeline as well as the public involvement efforts planned to keep all of you continually informed throughout the process. And then, like I said, we'll close this session out with a Q&A at the end. So again, at any point during this presentation, we'll have some maps. And then if you have any questions about those at any point, yeah, just feel free, and then we'll discuss at the end. I also wanted to add that last night we had our in-person session and we had a really great turnout. I have a feeling that we've got a few folks on the call who were there last night. So if you want to say hi in the Q&A, and if you have any other questions, that'd be great. But it was really nice. We had over 100 people definitely over at the school. So it was a really good turnout. So I'm gonna turn things over now to Bob. Do you want to start us off with the plans that MDT has in place?
You bet. Thanks, Amy. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today and taking time out of your schedule to hear more about this, the North of Stevensville project. It's a very big project. It's an exciting project for us. Most of you probably are aware it's been a long time in the works. This, as I said, is a very big project. It's got a lot of right-of-way acquisition and utility relocation work involved with it. So we appreciate everyone coming today and to help discuss these necessary improvements to the stretch of the Eastside Highway. I do want to discuss a little bit further. I'm sure it's no surprise to everyone who lived near the roadway that the roadway needs some safety improvements, and MDT definitely recognizes this. We've seen a crash pattern that's raised a need for work on the road to address these safety issues. So that's exactly what we'll be doing. As you can see on the slide here, we'll be adding the new road will have 12-foot wide travel lanes along with a 12-foot wide center two-way left turn lane. There'll be 4-foot shoulders on the sides of the road, and we'll be building safer roadside slopes and ditches. Also, improvements will be being made to the vertical alignment and the drainage. And we're going to be looking at utilizing some opportunities to upsize some of the new culverts that'll be placed to provide locations for wildlife to cross the road. The next slide that I'd like to move on to, I guess, is to turn this over to Jacqueline and Maureen to speak to you about some of the necessary right-of-way acquisitions. And that's one of the key topics about this, is that for this project to proceed in a timely fashion, the right-of-way acquisition process is really key is a key component. So Jacqueline.
Thank you, Bob. My name is Jacqueline Smith, and I am the pre-construction engineer for District 1. And just like you all, we are very excited to get this project completed. And we're at the exciting time where we are acquiring the necessary right-of-way to construct this project. To do that, we need to start reaching out to the landowners that we need the land to safely and effectively build the roadway. in case we have any landowners on the line, Maureen Walsh is going to be speaking about our right-of-way acquisition process briefly. And we also have a link to some resources to help answer any questions you may have. So Maureen, would you mind taking over?
Thanks, Jacqueline. I'm happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maureen Walsh, MDT's Missoula District Right-of-Way Supervisor. Thanks for joining us at this virtual open house. We really appreciate you taking the time to hear more about this project. As was previously mentioned, we are currently in the right-of-way phase of the project. And because we're improving the roadway, adding to the width of the road, constructing ditches and flattening slopes, amongst other enhancements, additional land will be required from property owners along the highway. That means it's time for my team of right-of-way agents to inspect and appraise the land in the project areas we need to purchase. We've begun that process. And there are some acquisitions that are large and complex, and for those we've sent out letters because those require the opportunity for the owner or the representative to accompany the appraiser on their inspection. Smaller, less complex parcels do not require that opportunity to be present during the inspection, so they have not been notified, even though they are also being valued now. Regardless, if you have land that you believe will be impacted and want to hear more, please reach out to us using the contact information on the last slide, and we'll be in touch. Once we've completed the appraisals, we will begin to make offers and start the land purchasing process. We know this sometimes takes a bit longer than expected, so we really want to thank you for all your patience. It's imperative that we be fair to landowners, and sometimes that means giving the acquisition the time and dedication that it requires. So thank you again for understanding. With all this in mind, I'd like to now pass it over to Josh to explain exactly where this work will take place.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josh Stold. I'm the road design project manager for MDT's District 1. As you can see on the slide, we'll be working on secondary 203 or Eastside Highway, starting at reference post 4, about 4 miles north of Stevensville and just south of Wildfowl Lane and Moise Lane. The project will extend to the north by 6 miles to reference post 10.1 just south of Hidden Valley Road. This project will tie into the previously constructed Florence East project back in 2014. As I'm sure you're all aware, we're also working just south of Stevensville on the South of Stevensville Safety Improvement Project. Both of these projects' timelines are not tied to one another. So as you guys are well aware, this is an area that, as Bob and others have mentioned, that is in dire need of safety improvements, and we're happy to be bringing them soon. Thank you all for your continued patience as we nail down the final details before beginning construction. Yeah. And then the other slides we do have. So this is a 3D rendering that's MDT created. That's of the Ambrose Creek Road intersection. It'll have a dedicated right turn lane for northbound traffic and a dedicated left turn lane for southbound traffic. And then if you scroll to the next sheet, the top view, that shows that striping configuration and how vehicles will be able to enter and exit Ambrose Creek Road. The next one is our 3D rendering of Rathman Lane intersection, which will have a dedicated left turn lane for northbound traffic. And lastly, this is the 3D rendering for one of the wildlife underpasses, which is near Porter Hill Road. And this is also one of the passing opportunities that we'll have within the project. So that is about all I have. So I'm going to pass it over to Andy now, who's going to talk about the project timeline. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Hello, everybody. My name is Andy White, and I manage the secondary roads program for the Montana Department of Transportation. And I want to discuss the project delivery timeline with you. But first, I'd like to mention something about the program that's a bit unusual, the secondary roads program that is funding this project. The program is tailored to address the needs of the counties. And as such, each county then would come to, as each county county's turn comes to pick up a project in the program cycle, the county comes to us to discuss the roadway they want to address and what they would like to do. MBT then works with them to establish the project limits and the appropriate scope of work, given the fiscal constraints that we're under at the time. So essentially, MDT is developing this project north of Stevensville on behalf of Ravalli County. As you can see on this project timeline slide, it has been a long time coming. Back in 2009, this project was first formally discussed with the public and a general project concept was proposed. Moving ahead to a time when MDT could actually begin project development in 2014 and 2015, we started by discussing the project alternatives, which drove our preliminary plans development. Large projects of this nature easily take 5 or 6 years to develop fully, which brings us to today. And currently we are in the right-of-way phase. And assuming that we get through this phase in this next year, we should be able to finalize the plans, secure all the permits, and award the contract to build the project the following year in 2024. So that's a quick look at the project timeline. And with that, I'd like to bring Amy back to tell you about her plans for the upcoming public involvement.
Thanks, Andy. So I did just want to mention again, last night we did have our open house for this project at the school, and again, had a great turnout. Looking forward to more open houses similar to that in the future. So the key to the project in terms of public involvement is keeping you all engaged completely throughout. So now, obviously very much before construction, through open houses, things like that. And then during construction, also having open houses, but also making sure that we're keeping you all continually updated about the happenings during construction. I know that's something that came up a little bit last night, as well as making sure that they're informed. I know there's schools, folks commuting that need to get through. So we'll make sure to have weekly updates, emails, text messages, things like that, to make sure you're all informed of the project happenings. And then of course, after, a little bit of follow-up too will be important, but mostly focusing on the before and during construction, making sure everyone's engaged as well. So depending on, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, we will continue to keep a hybrid approach. That is having an in-person session and a virtual session, just like we're doing yesterday and today. So it seemed to work pretty well for us. It's really nice for people who might not be able to attend the in-person event, or who simply might not want to. This seems to work better with having this available during the lunch hour, and then also, as last night was 4:30 to 7:30, kind of hitting the after work crowd, the commuters. So we'll plan to keep that approach as long as the COVID-19 pandemic is still relevant, and we're just continuing to keep an eye on that as well. So above all else, I mean, I'm a phone call away. We'll have it listed on the next slide. Last night I passed out a good amount of business cards, just letting people know if you just want to send me an email or give me a phone call. I'm happy to have a conversation. And I think that leads us into the Q&A pretty well. And before we hop in, I will just say, I do think there's a few landowners on the call. So if you have any questions specifically about your land, your right-of-way, use my contact information listed on the slide, and we can get you contacted to your right-of-way agent. So this Q&A will focus more so on the bigger picture and how it affects all of the residents that might not have land right on the project line. So I think with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Katie, and pop over to this next slide.
Thanks so much, Amy. We had a couple of good questions come through, and just a reminder for anybody else that you can feel free to type in any of those questions that you have on our Q&A chat. So first and foremost, I have a couple of questions for you, Jacqueline. So Lorraine has asked if a bike or pedestrian path to connect with the Florence segment and Wildfowl Lane is no longer part of the plan. So Jacqueline, could you maybe speak to the plans for a shared use path or how that's shaped up?
Yes, once upon a time there was a shared use path in conversation. However, we no longer have that as part of the project. There's a variety of reasons why it is no longer included, including just the extra right-of-way that would be needed to construct and build the shared use path. Maintenance, we need to be able to have somebody to take on and maintain the shared use paths. Once upon a time, that didn't happen. And we've seen issues in the past where paths were built but not maintained. And now we need to make sure that there is maintenance being performed on those paths. And we have not had anybody step up to take on the maintenance for a path should one be built here. And the other reason is just trying to limit the footprint of the roadway and being sensitive to the area that's out there environmentally.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline. That's really good context. And somewhat similar, we have a couple of questions coming in about the wildlife fencing or crossings. So Jacqueline, could you maybe spend a little bit of time talking about what those might look like?
Yeah, and I'm actually gonna let Josh chime in if I misspeak on any of this. Josh, would you mind speaking if and where we have any wildlife fencing?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's one structure, we had a 3D rendering of it kind of near Porter Hill Road. That's a kind of exclusive to wildlife crossings. It's not for drainage or anything else. Yeah, as you can see on the screen. And that one we're not going to have the exclusionary fence for the entire length of the project because it's just not practical in this scenario with cattle guards at every approach. So there'll be short sections of wing fencing that'll tie into the four corners of the structure. That'll help kind of corral any wildlife that are crossing this corridor in the area through that structure. So this is one of the areas, the Dry Gulch Road drainage culverts at Dry Gulch Road. It's like ground station 378. That one will be upsized as well. And there's a few of the other pipes for smaller pipes that are drainage now that will also be upgrading for kind of smaller ungulates or smaller mammals to cross through there. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. And folks, if you have any additional questions or follow up on that, please feel free just to send those back into that chat section and we can go from there. So next we have a couple of questions just came in kind of about the same thing, which is the speed limit on the road. So Bob, I'll direct that over to you. Would you maybe take a few minutes to explain what the thought process is moving forward on speed out here?
You bet. The speed limit is going to be the same as what it is today on the roadway. The new road will be designed for that speed. I know we've had a lot of comments, questions, concerns about the speed out there. Some folks want to make sure that the road is safe enough for the speed limit that's posted, which is what it will be. It'll be designed for that speed that's posted. But there's been a lot of comments, questions. Why don't we lower the speed? Will we lower the speed? Can we lower the speed? And just a brief discussion about speed limits on Montana's highways and how speed limits are set and changed on Montana's highways is actually covered under Montana state law. And there's a very set process on what that looks like and how that takes place. And it is not just simply MDT or engineers at MDT feeling that a different speed should be posted and we go change the sign. It's the process has to be initiated by the local governing agency, which in this case would be the county. The county commissioners are the point of contact that folks need to talk to, let them know that you have concerns with the speed. And then from that point, there's a very detailed process that takes place. A speed study is done, engineering analysis takes place. That analysis is sent back to the county commissioners, and then they have the opportunity to agree with that analysis, or they can feel there's other items that come into play besides those items identified through the engineering process. And the county commissioners then support or oppose the speed limit study, and they reach out to the Transportation Commission, which is the body that actually by Montana law can change the speed limits. And this is a body that's appointed by the governor of Montana, and they take the speed study, they take information from the county commissioners, and they take comments from the public, and they make a determination of what that speed limit should be in that area. So again, for people on the call, that very long-winded answer, but it's not as easy as just going out there and changing the signs. There's a lot of pros and cons to changing speed limits in various directions as well. So we do have some great information available, a pamphlet that describes this process that we can send to you if you're interested, or it's available on our webpage. But the general answer is if you feel that the speed limit needs to be changed, the starting process for the public is to reach out to their county commissioners on this project.
Thank you, Bob. Folks, if you have, again, some follow-up questions, let us know. I think that was pretty comprehensive. Another question that we had is, one, if we can maybe just revisit the time frame so folks can have clarity on what next steps look like. And then secondly, as you're maybe pulling that up, there was a question as to whether or not somebody can make a recommendation or a suggestion for some wildlife crossings. And the answer is yes, we're happy to hear your ideas. And that's what a lot of last night's open house was. The best way to do that, quite honestly, at this point is to shoot Amy a note or give her a call on those points of contact that we have on our last slide. And we can certainly follow from there and dig into some of that a little bit more. It's a really good opportunity at this point to see what thoughts are out there and how that project may adjust in alignment with that. So off of that soapbox, back to project timeline. Who wants to speak to that?
This is Jacqueline, I can. So timeline, we're definitely at an interesting point right now with the timeline, because up until this point, we've been working on the design and reaching out to resource agencies, and there's been some public involvement. The shift by going to this right-of-way phase now is a lot of the landowner coordination is really going to drive the schedule from now on. So the focus is to keep working with the landowners to acquire the necessary right-of-way and finish the final permitting. But a lot of this is dependent on how acquisition goes and how the permitting also goes. So we are targeting 2024 for construction, but it is highly dependent on when we get the necessary right-of-way and the permits. Does that answer your question? If not, please send a follow-up message.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And I see that we do have a hand up. Unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to be able to do more kind of one-on-one conversation at that point. So if there's an opportunity to type that question in, that's a great way for us to address it at this point in time. And if not, we can certainly set up a phone call later or something like that if you would like to discuss further. With that, looks like we have one additional question that just came in, which is, once that project gets started, what's the estimated timeline of how long construction might last?
I can hop in on that one. Right now, we're looking at 2 seasons for the project. And it'll probably be 2 full seasons, and with the potential for the kind of the chip seal being moved to the 3rd season, but hopefully it'll all be done in 2 seasons. And we are going to be reducing the impacts to the traveling public. So doing 1 to 1.5 miles of lane closures allowed at a time, so there's not 6 miles of single lane traffic, so we'll break it up so it's less impactful to the traveling public. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Josh. That's great. And then one follow-up question that I didn't ask for you to address earlier, Bob, is what about the noise levels on the road? There were a couple different questions about if the speed limit's adjusted, will that do anything to help with the noise, or are there any maybe more innovative construction techniques or materials that we could use to help quiet some of that roadway noise?
There are some materials that have been used. The one challenge that we're always facing, and I know everybody gets tired of me talking about it, feels like half the time, half the questions I get answered, it all rolls back into some sort of what's the cost component. So we constantly have to be balancing, are we building the right things for the right reason, and are we being fiscally responsible with the taxpayer dollars? And anytime we start getting into innovative materials, it tends to drive cost up. I don't know for sure if our design team has looked at any specifics. It's something that I'm going to let Josh speak to if he has. Like I say, I do know there are some roadway surfaces are quieter than others, and but I don't know if we've taken any looks at anything on this one.
Yeah, there was an original noise study that was done when we talked about widening the road and putting in the two-way left turn lane, and you know, just as a result of that, it's going to push the traffic out, you know, 6 feet closer to residents than it was before. The wider shoulders will help as well, but yeah, so the traffic volumes do increase a little bit, and definitely more so around the curves where we're kind of flattening those curves out a bit. But they did do a noise study, and they found that it shouldn't increase the levels too much, but they also did look at doing short sections of noise wall. But yeah, kind of like what Bob was saying, it doesn't always cost benefit out. You know, it would be very, very expensive for what benefit it would provide. So other than that, yeah, we haven't looked at other items at this point, but we could certainly do that. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Josh, and thanks, Bob. One more question that's come through is if the current striping map is the final one.
Yeah, and I can answer that too. It is the final one we have so far. We're, like we said, we're still open to hearing everybody's input and comments, and if people find some things they don't like or issues, please provide your comments, and we can definitely take a look at them.
Thanks, Josh. Sorry, it was not clear that I was hoping to tee that one up for you. I appreciate you jumping in. It looks like those are all of the questions that we currently have. So again, just a quick reminder, if you do have a question or something that you want the team to see, please throw those into the Q&A system at the bottom. The chat can get a little clunky and only certain people can see it. We want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to weigh in. So if you have anything, feel free to throw it into that Q&A. But otherwise, I think that's all I'm seeing on my end. So maybe I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, well, that was great. Thank you all for those questions. And I have a few folks that I'm going to follow up with on some right of way, so I will make sure to do that as well. You know, I think we're pretty much wrapped up here, unless if anyone attending has any final questions that have come up. Again, kind of last call here, so get those typed in. But otherwise, I would just add, I really appreciate everyone for joining us. And if you do want to send me an email for those weekly updates, once construction does get started, I can add you to that list. We'll also keep that list in the years leading up to construction, in case we do have any other open houses or any other items that we think might be critical for you to know about this project. I won't spam your inbox, just any critical updates that I think could be important. I'll send those out to that distribution list as well. So we also man that hotline. So if you have any questions, you'll speak to my colleague Caitlin, and she can get you in contact with me. So we will have a recorded version of this open house on the website, which I hope you'll visit. It's listed here too. These 3D renderings are found there. The maps of the area that we had at the open house last night, they're a little bit big for a screen here, but they'll be on the website as well. Actually, they are now. So if you want to go take a look there, a wealth of information is on that webpage. So I would implore you to go take a look there. Send me an email if you want to stay updated. But I think otherwise, we're wrapped up here, unless we have any existing or last questions here. Okay, no,
Doesn't
we
look
don't.
like we do, Amy.
Perfect. Alrighty. Well, and thank you to our panelists for being here. It's always nice to hear from you all, and give me a shout if you have any other questions. But again, thank you all for attending. Appreciate it.